Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a purely historical and mathematical analysis of global financial collapses. When you picture the modern global economy, you probably visualize this ultra-detailed, cinematic environment, right? Glowing 3D stock market charts, candlestick graphs rising and falling, digital numbers and currency symbols like the dollar and euro zipping across futuristic holographic world maps. It's highly interconnected, it's professional, it's everywhere. But beneath that pristine digital surface lies a structural reality that most folks completely ignore, until it's way too late. Today, we are uncovering the hidden architecture of asset seizure. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a premium, structured roadmap to help us decode this complex macroeconomic history. Number 1, the illusion of ownership. 2, the mechanism of seizure. 3, 5 seizure-resistant assets. 4, the administrative graph. And finally, number 5, the mathematical inevitability.
Section 1, The Illusion of Ownership. Subtitle, Munich, 1933. Let me take you back there for a second. Imagine you're a dentist in Munich. You've spent 20 solid years building up your practice. You own a small apartment building, you've got a savings account that should absolutely guarantee a comfortable retirement, and you hold some gold coins and government bonds. Basically, you did everything exactly right. But then, on the morning of April 26th, you open the newspaper and read Executive Order 133. Suddenly, you're required to surrender your gold. Your savings account, frozen. Your apartment is slammed with a massive, retroactive emergency tax. You're sitting at your kitchen table and you realize something absolutely terrifying.
It hits you like a ton of bricks. You actually don't own what you think you own. You just hold it. You maintain it. And when a severe fiscal crisis actually hits, the distinction between owning something and just being its custodian vanishes, literally instantly. Historical crises rewrite the fundamental rules of ownership overnight. Now, you might be thinking, well, that was a long time ago, but it is absolutely crucial to understand that this isn't just some fringe theory. We're looking at a recurring mathematical pattern across modern global history. Just look at the timeline. From Germany and the US in 1933 to Argentina in 2001, Cyprus in 2013, Lebanon in 2019. The specific mechanism of how they seize the assets changes from country to country, but the outcome, it absolutely doesn't. When insolent institutions are desperate to survive, they feed on whatever they can easily see. Which brings us to Section 2, the mechanism of seizure. Subtitle, the bureaucracy of collapse. So how do they actually pull this off? When people hear about asset seizure, they usually picture soldiers kicking in doors and physically carrying away valuables. But honestly, that's highly inefficient. Governments don't usually use physical force to take assets. They use something much more sophisticated. They use administrative access. Impartially defined, this is simply when regulatory frameworks are used to freeze, convert, or redefine wealth without a single shot being fired. Let me explain. Listen, when you deposit money in a bank, legally it's no longer your money. You have just made an unsecured loan to an institution. What you actually hold is just a claim, literally a digital number on a screen. And in a crisis, the government just changes the rules governing that screen. Let's look at the modern track record here. In Cyprus back in 2013, they didn't steal, they executed a bail-in, forcibly converting deposits above a certain threshold to recapitalize the banks. Greece 2015, sudden capital controls, accounts completely frozen. And Argentina in 2001, the Carlito, dollar-denominated accounts were forcibly converted into pesos at a totally artificial rate. If you had 100 grand on December 1st, by February you essentially had the equivalent of 25 grand. The money never physically moved an inch. The rules moved.
Section 3, 5 seizure-resistant assets. Subtitle, What Survives the Math. If legality can be rewritten that easily, the core structural question isn't what shouldn't they take, it's what can't they take. Now, what's really interesting about this is the actual structural taxonomy. Let's break down the 5 categories that mathematically resist administrative seizure. Asset number 1 is knowledge and skills. And this is a huge distinction, we have to separate institutional knowledge from functional knowledge. Institutional knowledge, like a specific law degree, is jurisdiction dependent. It loses its value if the issuing authority collapses. But functional knowledge, being a surgeon, an electrician, a mechanical engineer, that has universal transferability. When Albert Einstein fled Germany in 1933, his bank accounts and real estate were gone, but his brilliant mind wasn't. Functional skills are the ultimate border-crossing, unfreezable asset. I mean, you literally can't bail in a nervous system. Asset number 2 is portable physical assets. And here is where a lot of people misunderstand gold. Gold held in a bank's safe deposit box, registered custody, is highly vulnerable. Just look at FDR's 1933 Executive Order 6102, which easily forced banks to surrender custodied gold. The true resistance comes from unregistered possession. Think of the Belgian refugees in 1940 who escaped across borders with untraceable diamonds sewn into their coats. Now, obviously, this invisibility comes with massive physical risk, severe liquidity limits, and high friction. But mathematically, it sits entirely outside administrative reach.
Asset number 3 brings us right into the digital age, decentralized digital assets. Assets like Bitcoin have introduced a genuinely unprecedented structural property. Through a seed phrase, your wealth can live purely in your memory. We've seen citizens in places like Afghanistan and Venezuela use this to cross borders, carrying absolutely nothing physical, yet perfectly preserving their savings. However, maintaining our strict, impartial analysis, we have to note that this comes with massive volatility and extreme technical risk. If you forget your memorized phrase, there is zero customer service to call.
Asset number 4 is foreign-held assets in stable jurisdictions. An administrative border acts as a hard stop to a government's reach. Look at November 2001. A citizen with $100,000 in a bank in Buenos Aires was decimated by forced conversion. But if that exact same citizen held $100,000 just 90 minutes away in Montevideo, Uruguay, completely untouched, fully preserved. Now, while this is subject to strict legal reporting requirements like FBAR in the US, geographically diversifying into jurisdictions with strong rule of law has historically been a highly effective shield.
And finally, asset number 5, social capital. Seriously, the ultimate off-balance sheet asset. During the 2001 Argentine collapse, a vast network of barter clubs sprang up. During the Soviet collapse, the blot system of informal reciprocal favors literally kept people alive. You can't freeze a relationship, right? You can't retroactively tax a favor owed. Yet, modern society is experiencing a really dangerous decline in community ties, leaving populations financially exposed and incredibly socially isolated. Let's move to Section 4, the administrative graph. Subtitle, The Architecture of Visibility. Let's see how this all builds into an overarching theory of how governments observe citizen wealth.
Remember those cinematic, holographic financial interfaces we pictured earlier? The state actually sees your wealth through what we call the administrative graph. It's this incredibly interconnected digital map of banking, property, and tax systems. Successful seizure requires two things: visibility and administrative access. When an institution becomes insolvent, it basically operates on a biological imperative. Survival completely overrides principle. It will simply consume whatever accessible resources are inside this graph.
And this perfectly summarizes the core structural tension of this entire explainer. The 5 asset categories we just discussed, they aren't some hot investment portfolio. They are simply a structural taxonomy of what falls completely off the government's map. Bank accounts and domestic real estate sit entirely inside the graph. But functional skills, foreign accounts, memorized digital assets, and community trust, those exist completely outside of it.
Which leads us to Section 5, the mathematical inevitability, subtitled Looking at the Modern Data. Let's pivot from historical case studies to the present-day macroeconomic environment, maintaining our strict, impartial, analytical tone, because remember, this is about math, not politics.
$36 trillion. That is the staggering U.S. federal debt as of early 2025. Annual deficits are running near $2 trillion, and the annual interest payments on this debt have recently surpassed the entire national defense budget. Again, these are math problems. And look at Japan. They currently operate at a debt-to-GDP ratio of over 260%. How? Through what is effectively a silent seizure. By enforcing financial repression and negative real interest rates for decades, the state quietly, invisibly confiscates wealth, constantly taxing savers below inflation. So the crucial point is, when the math breaks down, insolvent governments really only have 3 painful options. They can default, which is almost always politically impossible. They can inflate, which is just a silent tax on everyone holding currency, or they can execute direct administrative seizure, bail-ins, capital controls, and retroactive wealth taxes. And guess what? All 3 of these options specifically target assets trapped inside the administrative graph. Let's bring this all the way back to our Munich dentist. He believed he was perfectly safe because he held conventional, convenient assets. But convenience and safety are not the same thing. In fact, they are often total opposites. The most convenient asset is almost always the one most easily seized, precisely because convenience relies entirely on the institutional infrastructure that governments completely control during a crisis.
History proves time and again that insolvent systems will always consume what they can reach. So as we look at the brilliantly glowing, highly interconnected reality of our modern financial architecture, I want to leave you with this. The question isn't if the math will eventually require governments to act. The question is, what of yours exists outside the graph when it does? Thank you so much for watching this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and we'll see you next time.